A reminder of our top story tonight. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam is holding her first dialogue right now with members of the public. The session at the Queen Elizabeth Stadium in Wan Chai is expected to end at 9 o'clock. It's part of the government's efforts to reconnect with citizens and to find an end to the city's political crisis.
Participants' questions have mostly been about police handling of recent protests and calls for political reform in the city. Now, outside the stadium, hundreds of protesters have gathered and are blocking the roads. They've been chanting slogans demanding the government respond to all protest demands. About a dozen officers are guarding the stadium entrance and car park.
Our correspondent Roland Lim has been listening to the dialogue inside the Queen Elizabeth Stadium. He joins us live to tell us the latest from there. Roland, we've heard that there were several questions about protest demands for an independent inquiry into police handling of demonstrations, and a number of people also asked about political reforms. How did the government respond?
Right, yeah. Mrs. Carrie Lam started off the entire dialogue session by saying that it was time to talk and that this dialogue wasn't a PR stunt, that it was supposed to find a way out for Hong Kong. So invariably, a gamut of questions were asked towards her, but mostly concentrating on the fact, why isn't the government instituting an independent commission of inquiry into police action as well as the protest actions that have taken place since June, nearly 4 months now, as well as questions about Hong Kong's competitiveness with calls, for example, by Beijing that Shenzhen overtake Hong Kong as a financial center. Many were also wondering why the government was actually putting police against the importance of protesters, that whether the rights of protesters and police were seen on an equal footing. Now, Mrs. Carrie Lam says that she has heard the 5 demands loud and clear on the streets. However, she says that Hong Kong's deep-rooted problems actually goes beyond those 5 demands. As to the question of an independent inquiry, she says that the IPCC, that's the Independent Police Complaints Council, is already working on a study into the protest actions that have started from June. They have beefed it up with independent advisors from outside of Hong Kong, as well as increased transparency and credibility to the IPCC report. She's saying that the report is coming out in several months' time, and that the IPCC should be given a chance to do its work, and then when the report comes out, that judgment can be made as to how to proceed from there. So she's saying that she is interested in finding out the truth, but there are more ways to do that instead of just an independent inquiry itself, that the IPCC can do the same job. So that was actually one of the most asked questions. The others, at some point as well, I should mention that there was one particularly plucky speaker who had called on Carrie Lam to resign, saying that she should be ashamed of herself, because why wasn't she invited to China's 70th anniversary celebrations in Beijing? And that, is it because that President Xi is ashamed of her and that she should be taking responsibility for the violence that's been seen on the streets thus far? Now, Carrie Lam acknowledges that yes, the fact that the government had failed to listen to the voices of the people had given the impression that the government was actually running roughshod over the general public. But she says that yes, despite her slogan campaign when she got elected to connect with the Hong Kong people, that she has been disconnected with the Hong Kong people. And this platform, really, this dialogue session and more to come, is really a part of her efforts to actually try to reconnect with the people again and to gain the trust of the Hong Kong public.
Now, Roland, based on what you've observed, do you think the government achieved anything through this first dialogue session?
Well, Mrs. Lam had always said that this was going to be a very long road, so there was no illusions that this was going to solve any problems. Now, for people that have been listening into the now past 90 minutes or so of Q&A, you'd find that Mrs. Carrie Lam was actually short on answers, and she was doing most of the listening herself. So there are no easy answers. They know that they will have to continue with this dialogue session in a bit to try to build up trust again in her government as well as in the police. So that's going to take a long time. So it is a very long road. This is only baby steps, but to the protesters out there outside the venue that are actually protesting here, they will, of course, not be surprised that Mrs. Lam, short of any answers and especially not giving to any concessions, there are 5 demands, as you well know. She has already conceded to formally withdrawing the extradition bill, but as to the other 4, we are not seeing any concessions to those demands here today.
Well, thanks so much, Roland, for bringing us the latest on the dialogue. And that was Roland Lim reporting live from Hong Kong.